This is Comic Geek Speak, episode 83. Welcome to Comic Geek Speak. I'm Brian Deemer.
I'm Shane Kelly. I'm Kevin Moyer.
I'm Peter Rios.
Of course, the Green Goblin showed up, and he pumpkin bombed the hell out of the place.
And welcome to the show. Just this episode of Comic Geek Speak is sponsored by Tomorrow's Publishing. You've heard us talk about them before. They publish a whole slew of books about comics and magazines about comics. They have what books do they have coming out soon? They have
The Dark Age.
Yeah, all about the implosion of comics in the 90s and stuff. And they,
Modern Masters featuring Art Adams.
Art Adams, which I'm really excited to buy.
Are they doing a second volume of the JLA thing?
JSA?
JSA, I mean.
Yeah, that's not scheduled yet, though.
No.
Okay.
And the Titans Companion should be soon.
Should be soon. Thunder Agents is out right now.
Yeah.
That's it. I couldn't think Thunder Agents.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then, of course, every month there's an issue of Alter Ego magazine edited by Roy Thomas. That's about like Golden Age comics, and then there's
The bi-monthly back issue.
which is like 70s and 80s comics, and they have the Jack Kirby Collector, which is a tabloid-sized magazine that's quarterly, I guess, all about Jack Kirby. So they really have, it's tomorrows.com.
And that Jack Kirby, isn't it upcoming an interview that was never printed before?
Yes, correct. Yeah, it's in this current previews. So if you like reading about comics as well as reading comics, then be sure to check out some of the stuff from Tomorrow's Publishing. A reminder that our Book of the Month Club selection for December is the first Animal Man trade by Grant Morrison. It is... What are you looking for, Peter?
I was actually looking for it.
Oh, okay. If you want to get it, you can get it from InStockTrades.com for 40% off, as well as Volumes 2 and 3. They all have them for 40% off also. So this episode, we decided to... it's episode 83, and it just so happens that in just a couple weeks, it's Stan Lee's 83rd birthday. So we thought it'd be a good time to do a spotlight on Stan and his impact on the world of comics, as we clued you in on by the little sound clip at the beginning. So we're just going to talk about Stan and his life and some of his works, and there you have it.
Done.
Okay. Don't be so excited, guys.
Well, I have to say for myself, growing up and being...
Who else would...
Yeah, well, I kind of figured that, so I figured I might as well start
for me, and I was going to speak for him.
That being exposed to Marvel Comics, and especially Spider-Man in general, at an early age was, of course, who I migrated to and who I stuck with. And what impressed me the most was that every time I would pick up a Marvel comic, it was like written by Stan Lee. And I was like, holy mackerel, And then as time went on and I started, like buying calendars and things that Marvel was putting out, that I would see these items like, here's, Stan Lee hits issue number 100 of Spider-Man after, like, and they made a joke of it, like he's sitting there typing, and then it's like the next picture he's typing again, and he's like hunched over a little more, and it's like he hits issue 100, and he's like slumped over the, he's like, I finally made it,
Right.
And it really kind of gave me a different viewpoint that wow, look what this guy's doing, writing how many books a month for how many years, and then realizing that he's also doing everything else, and I thought, wow, where do you get all that from? Bad enough you try to write one book or two books a month. How do you write 12, 15? Granted, he was plotting a lot of it, which is how he developed the Marvel way,
method, right? Yeah.
To plot it and let the artist, put their spin on things and just follow your plot and story and flesh things out, which is how that came about. But still, he had the concept and the original ideas for each issue, or even if he didn't, the artist would come into his office. I'd read stories that, they come into the office and like, okay, we're ready to talk about, Captain America number 115. And he'd be like, all right, let's do this. And, and he just like right off the top of his cuff, that you listen to stories like, John Romita used to say that, it was like he'd tape record him and stuff because, Stan would be getting up onto his desk and standing and acting everything out as he's talking about it. And, you got to take everything in that you can, and then walk away from that and actually then draw the comic. And
Wouldn't that be some great video clip?
oh my God, and it really kind of put things in perspective as far as what he did, and to see his face being drawn and put out there with Marvel. I mean, his face was just as synonymous as Spider-Man's face was. With Marvel.
Yeah. I mean, because I was thinking about that, and is there any other single person in all of comics history who is as immediately recognizable both by his picture and by his voice than Stan? I mean, people. There's always the argument who was better, Jack Kirby or Stan Lee or whatever. But most people wouldn't recognize Jack Kirby if they saw a picture of him.
Right.
But everyone knows who Stan Lee is.
Right.
I mean, Stan Lee even sometimes breaks the boundaries of comic fans. There are regular people who maybe they don't know exactly who he is, but they've heard his name. He really, was the face of comics for a long time.
I have to say, for me, I it's no secret I've always gravitated toward DC Comics as a medium to read. But as a youngster, the first thing that I ever associated with Marvel was Stan Lee and Spider-Man, because he did all the narrations for the cartoons.
Yeah.
He was the first person that I recognized in the comics industry and have known all my life since I was like 4, that I know he has a lot to do with comics. It's just, he's always there in the forefront. He's always right up front.
One of my favorite images is, I think John Romita Sr. did it for him, was it's a face picture of Stan, and then they have little parts of each hero, like Iron Man.
Did they do it for the trading card set?
I don't remember what it was initially.
That 1992.
Oh, it was before that was.
Okay, because maybe they just used that.
They just utilized that image.
Used it in that.
I remember seeing that. I'm pretty sure in the 70s, like late 70s or early 80s, that it was on the back of a. They used to put out books like the Son of, like Origins of Marvel Comics, Son of Origin, things like that. Like Marvel's Greatest Battles, superhero battles. I used to pick those up at the bookstore, when I go to Walden's.
Like a smaller format?
No. These are like a trade paperback or a little bit larger, and they were usually about an inch or so thick. And they would just reprint, Marvel Comics. Like, the origin of Marvel Comics, they would take specific characters, and they would show the origin story behind that character, and then show a single story in that character's comic. And they would do that with like maybe 10 characters, and that would fill up this like inch thick, paperback. And I loved them. I loved the hell out of them. When I used to look forward to seeing those things, pop up in the Walden bookstore or something like that. And I believe it was on one of those things that they had this image of Stan Lee, and it's like when they painted it, it's like you can see part of Iron Man's helmet and Captain America's A and the Vision's gem and Spider-Man's eye, and that's exactly synonymous with how I kind of envisioned Stan almost, because he was behind all these characters, and they were a part of him just as well as he was part of their existence in that form, in that literary form.
Well, I think I've read or heard things where he always seemed to put a little bit of himself into everything he did. Like the rage that he did was in the Hulk, and awkwardness might have been in Spider-Man. I mean, every writer does it, but it seems like he really had so much in him to share. It was amazing.
And it's interesting to see the things he did with the Marvel Comics, that to take them in such a different direction, to realize that, hey, superhero books are kind of coming back. What can I do that's different, than what you've seen already? And to start doing self-conscious stories and fighting amongst family and friends, and putting that turmoil and that extra layers of caricatures in those books is what really made Marvel synonymous with their books, and different from what you were seeing outside of that.
And he wanted to write comics that he wanted to read.
Right.
Yeah. He was, if anybody, he was writing for himself more than anybody.
Right, and he even said, like, even though comics at that time, there was no such thing as collecting comics, there was no such thing as comic book stores. People were just reading comics. Whoever was reading them was reading them. And granted, there was more, I guess, understood that it was kids reading comics. But when Stan came on and did what he did with Marvel, it seemed that they were starting to see, especially introducing the letters pages, that college kids were reading these, and they had followings, and they had impact on what they were experiencing in their own lives, and they were reflecting that back to Marvel. That Stan opened that doorway to the audience as well, and he realized that. And then when he did that, he realized, you know what, I'm not dumbing down my writing and my vocabulary because these are for kids. He wrote them, and hell, I learned a lot of vocabulary reading Marvel comics because I was like, what's this word, and
Well, that special that was on A&E a while ago, not the one for touring New York City, but the one about comics in general, I kind of thought that also mentioned on there was that they sent them in care packages to GIs during World War II.
Oh, really?
And a lot of young men over there started to read that and enjoy it and look for them as entertainment, just because that was all they got over there was these comic book magazines.
I remember hearing about that some of the GIs, it was great to be able to read comics. I didn't realize that they sent them over there specifically for them. But
I'll have to watch that again. I'm almost sure that
I remember GIs talking about that. They would be reading issues of Superman and Captain America, and seeing a comic of Captain America punching out Hitler. And it was like, this is great, and it's very uplifting for them. It gives them some motivation, and also kind of gives them some fantasy, but yet reality to what they're already dealing with.
Oh yeah, especially the Marvel side of it. I mean, as much as I like DC, they really had more of a fantastical quality to them, because a lot of the cities weren't real cities. They were modeled after ones. But Marvel, it all happened right there, like Captain America punching Hitler. It was all happening right there, right then.
I mean, that's one of the things I loved about, the Fleischer Superman cartoons, that they were like that, Superman and Clark Kent and Lois would go to Japan, and he'd be sabotaging, their war effort, and stuff. So I can enjoy that, and I'm not from that era, so I can imagine being a GI and dealing with that on a daily basis, and then getting to read these wonderful stories and
later on with the Sergeant Rock, like Joe Kubert was telling us.
Right.
Well, back then life wasn't as cynical either, so it was taken more of face value fun rather than even getting a message across. I mean, it was propaganda to a certain extent, but GIs back then did it because of their love of the country and the love of their family.
Right.
And I think the world is much more cynical about that now. Did Stan go off to war? Did he?
Yes, he was.
But he didn't. He never left the country.
No, but he was in the service.
He enlisted in 1942, and then they used him to write manuals and training films and things like that. And then after that, he came back to Marvel. I can't even believe that he got his start as editor at 19 years old.
Yeah,
wow.
and that was something that he.
I don't think I knew that he was.
He was looking for a job, found it in the paper.
No,
they mentioned nothing about
I read a bunch of stuff today. That's actually that's how he remembered it for a long time.
Oh, okay.
But he admits that he got his memory screwed up. He actually his uncle was the brother-in-law of Martin Goodman.
That's what I thought. I knew he was
and
related.
And he got him the job when he was 16 and a half.
Jeez.
After he graduated high school, he was like the gopher for a little while, and then they let him help out with some things. And then he was 2 years later, he was editor-in-chief.
He wrote his first prose story. And
it was a 2-page fill-in for Captain America, because they had to have prose to qualify for the cheaper magazine shipping rate.
Huh.
Oh, okay.
So to mail out, they got cheaper postage if they had prose in it and not just pictures. So he said no one ever read that stuff, but that was Stan's first published work, was a 2-page spread in Captain America.
So then he was EIC from the age of 19 until when?
No,
not editor-in-chief. No,
okay.
He was an editor, but he still had Martin Goodman over him.
Yeah, Martin Goodman was publisher. Stan was editor. His title was editor until 1972.
Editor-in-chief didn't come about.
Right, he still answered to Martin Goodman and Martin Goodman oversaw the creative aspect of the books and what direction
the editing was put in Stan's hand.
Yeah.
And as the company grew, then his title grew to editor-in-chief. But he was the highest editor on the food chain until 1972, when he replaced Martin as publisher.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a hell of a run.
That's a good
I shouldn't say
long
that.
time.
When he was in the war, there was another guy who was editor for that short time period. It was like 3 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And then he came back and then resumed his post.
Wow.
And one of his first characters was actually a character called Black Marvel, right? I believe it is.
I don't remember that.
He had like 3. They talk about 3 characters that he created that never went anywhere. You know, one of them I think was called Black Marvel.
That was a century.
Yeah.
Oh, Vincent Fago was the
Interim.
Fago was the
Was replacement for those 3
for those
years.
3 years, yeah, and editor of Timely's animation comics. And they were funny animal comics, which were
So
popular.
was that like Black Marvel and those? That was done in the 50s.
I want to say whenever he first started, I think that was.
Oh, so that might have been
I
in
mean,
the
it was
40s.
really early.
Oh, okay.
You know that they were here and then gone again. It was not obviously before. It wasn't during Fantastic Four.
Right.
It wasn't even during like all the monsters era in the 50s and all that. I think it was definitely earlier than that.
With the senator, censoring all the comics and going back to revamping the whole comic industry after they got.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he talks about when right before he did Spider-Man, he thought, well, he knew that title was going to end, Amazing Fantasy, and then
Right.
was it his wife or somebody said why don't you just write a story that you want to write, or maybe it was even about Fantastic Four, I forget, and no, maybe not Fantastic Four, and he said, you know what, I'm just going to write this character because it's probably never going to go any further than this anyway, and then the higher ups were like, ooh, Spider-Man, ew, who wants to read about a spider or an icky thing, that can.
Yeah. And then when he
And
said he
it's-
was a teenager, and
Right. And then,
who wants to read about a teenager? They're sidekicks.
the rest is history.
He just broke the mold. He took, with the Fantastic Four. I mean, that was their reaction to the success of the Justice League, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
yeah.
They wanted to, DC's got this group book. That's a great idea. Why don't we have our own group book? And that ended up being the Fantastic
and-
Four.
Oh, go ahead, Jim.
That was during one of his golf outings with one of the DC guys, I think, and they were saying how much success they were having with the JLA.
And because Marvel was in such a funk with their sales, Martin Goodman was like, I don't care what you do whatever you want to do. So he just went
To an extent, yeah. But I mean,
but he basically just said, all right,
I want a
I'll
team
just
book.
this."
Do a team book.
Right.
And Stan took that, and rather than just try to duplicate or assimilate to what Justice League was, he took it. He went outside the box and kind of broke the stereotype of the super group at the time. And
What's funny is that he really couldn't have copied anything because Marvel didn't. I mean, you could have brought back some of their older characters, but they didn't have characters in existence
Right.
to group
Right.
together. So
Yeah.
until
Yeah.
he and
Created
the
some.
artists co-created these things, then obviously they came up with Avengers.
right, but I meant more to the fact that instead of coming up with a group of 6, 7 heroes
Right.
and trying to make a team and just like, hey, they're going to go out and fight this person or something like this, that he actually decided to have 4 characters and 2 of them be a brother and sister, and
Family,
and
space
have
was
that
involved instead of just
right, and just to add more depth to it and a whole different direction, kind of think outside the box a bit.
I'm really excited to get my next. Probably it'll be in my next shipment from DCBS. As I ordered that Fantastic Four omnibus.
Oh,
It's the first 30 issues of FF, reprinted in oversized hardcover form. So it's a really thick hardcover. And the one guy on the forum said it actually has the letters pages for each of the issues as
Nice.
well. So it's like the entire issue. No ads, but everything else is in there. And it's normally $100, but they had it 50% off, so it's $50. I figure, 30 comics plus the annual, I guess, is 31 issues for $50. You certainly can't buy those.
especially oversized.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, it's a little more than $1 an issue. That's well worth it for the first 30 FF. So I'm really excited to
Well,
read
plus-
the birth of the Marvel Universe that way.
Isn't there supposed to be things that they have like extras to it, like they talk about specific things with each issue? Like, I thought there was supposed to be some sort of
I
There
thought they
might
were,
be.
like, commentary.
Yeah,
Those kind of things.
Yeah, that they were
it
gonna-
could be. I only saw it at the one comic shop, but it was still wrapped in plastic, so I couldn't
Yeah.
look in it. And then I looked on DCBS and saw it was 50%. I went, yeah, I'll take one of those.
yeah.
And I think just to throw this out there so that everybody understands that we are not dissing the artists' inspirations and what they brought to all
Oh,
this
no.
as well.
Absolutely
not
not.
at all.
We totally understand that, but I mean,
Right.
when I read that Five Fabulous Decades of Marvel by Les Daniels, I read that a couple years back. I said, all right, I'm going to read this sucker, and there's Stan Lee's name. Okay, and then that's the Golden Age, and then you get into like the Atomic Age in the 50s and the monsters. There's Stan Lee's name again, and you get into Fantastic Four and Spider-Man. and Doctor Strange and Iron Man and Thor and go on and Hulk and on. And his name was everywhere. I mean, I knew that, but I didn't know that. You know, when you really read
When you read
the
timeline.
history, it's overwhelming. And again, we're not slighting the artist, but what his what the hell contribution to, I mean, it's almost even more than that, because he really is where it started from. I mean, if you think about it. And I, as a fan of DC, I read that book and I went, wow. I mean, this guy was everywhere. You could not escape it until he left Marvel, and then you started to see, you know, the other EICs and how they split the different comics. You know, in the 80s they started to branch out even more with the editors, and but I couldn't believe that how strong of a presence he was.
And for me, I think perhaps the coolest thing about him is not even just the creations that he did, but his ability to involve the audience in Marvel Comics, with all the mighty Marvel
Marching Society,
and
Foom,
and all those kind of things, and no prizes, and sending letters in, and getting people involved, and the Stan soapbox, and news from the bullpen, and all that kind of stuff. You know, and even as a kid reading books in the late 80s, even though Stan wasn't around as much, they still kept that feeling, and I just felt like I was a part of Marvel, and you know, that really helped separate them from DC, especially in the 60s and 70s, and you know, he had the insight to do that and say, hey, instead of just selling my stuff to the readers, I'm going to involve the readers, or at least let them feel like they're involved, even though they aren't really involved.
There's actually an article in the latest back issue about Marvel's letter columns. I can't remember what number back issue this one just came out, 14, 12, something like that.
Either.
It's the one with the
14, I think.
the romance,
cover, right.
it's the romance issue. That 70s issue it is, and they actually have an article about I think it's David Anthony Kraft who responded to a lot of the letters.
Oh.
If a writer or an editor couldn't respond or didn't want to or whatever, he did a lot of those.
Huh.
It's about a 6 to 8 page article in that recent back issue, and so check that out just to kind of tie in our sponsor.
Sure.
And all this. And there was a time though too. I mean, we should say also that there were times that those letters were written by somebody from Marvel. I mean,
That's right.
I mean, that is, but I'm sure it didn't take long before the flood of letters came in. You were talking about colleges, and I know the Hulk was a mascot or was adopted by a college. I can't even remember which one it is, but they just latched onto that character and just everything that it stood for or whatever, and so it's just amazing the impact all those characters had.
Yeah, I mean, up until recently, I hadn't really read many comics that Stan wrote. Because I guess I just finished reading the first Essential Avengers, and you know, I'm looking forward to the Captain America and the odd story here and there. But because I was, you know, past the time he was writing comics, but you know, again, you know who he is.
Right.
The name is, and Stan Lee presents every Marvel comic, even today, and I hope forever.
I think so.
absolutely.
I think that's
100
something.
years
that
from
should
now,
be forever.
Yeah.
It says the same thing.
It shouldn't even be about hope. It should just be.
It should just
I
be.
demand.
It
Yeah,
should just be.
Yeah.
There should be no deliberation about it.
Yeah.
It should be every comic, after, you know, God forbid, after Stan is gone, that every Marvel comic has Stan Lee Presents on it. I mean, it's to me, I feel that that's just the least
way
you
it
could
should
do.
be.
The least
Oh,
you
yeah.
could do.
Because he was so single-handedly involved.
Right.
I mean, again, we said other people, but he
Yeah,
was unanimously involved, I should say, in
And
everything,
Every
or
aspect.
whatever the word is I'm looking for. In every aspect, he had a part in it. Across
I mean, for
the
how many
board.
years he did it? Just
Yeah.
he did everything.
Yeah.
You know. So I mean,
And then had to also, like we said earlier, deal with the business side of it
right.
too. I mean,
Right. You know, not only did you have to do the creation process and handle all the parts of the processing the comic, but you had to, you know, kind of discuss it with the higher ups, you know, the business people who were not creative and who did not understand, what was great about comics and what was not great and what would be good and what wouldn't be good,
And still keep it fun, like
Exactly.
that story Gene had.
Yeah.
Still keep it fun in the office for all the artists and editors to relax, take
What
a
a
step
guy.
back.
I mean,
give
what a guy.
give all his creators, nicknames, and like Gene the Demon,
Yeah, and-
Rascally Roy, and
Jazzy John Romita.
He's got away with names.
yeah.
He loves it. He loves doing that, and that's the thing that he did with the comics as well. He instead of just calling the book of the character, it was the Invincible Iron Man, the Amazing Spider-Man, the Mighty Thor, and
That's why I still think the second Spider-Man movie should have been the Amazing Spider-Man.
yeah, I agree with that. Would have been kind of cool
And the third one could be Peter Parker or
Spectacular.
Spider-Man.
or sensational or
Yeah. That's
He loved that. He loved adjectives, and
Alliteration.
Yeah, I mean,
He loved alliteration.
and exclamations, and he really had that energy, and it bled over into what he produced.
and subsequently into us as readers or fans of the cartoon or whatever you hear. It just you had talked one time about seeing him and how his aura almost just exuded from him, and I would love to be in that presence.
Yeah, when I met him at a convention in Philadelphia about 10 years ago, he had done a little bit of a signing in the actual comic floor area, and then he was going to one of the specialty rooms to do a question and answer thing. And I thought, this is my opportunity to. I'm not a big autograph hound, but the thing I like to do is get a picture taken with somebody. That way I can look back at that and go, yeah, I remember meeting that guy. And if somebody's like, hey, I can prove that I met that person, and. So I was doing that, and they were being very protective of him. They were not letting people, talk about it. He wasn't flooded with people either. People, I guess, didn't even think to even try to go up and talk to him or say hi to him.
They were probably afraid of the guards coming out of the woodwork.
Well, yeah, he had some publicist, a female publicist, and she was doing a damn good job at being very stern to anybody that was about to approach him or anything. And I waited and took my moment when she wasn't looking and slipped right in there, and the energy he had, I mean, he knew me from nobody. And all I just asked him was like, hey, Stan, I said, could I get a picture with you? Sure, let's, and when she heard it, she turned around, and I could just see this look on her face. But she didn't turn me away. But he was more than happy. He didn't care, that I was, interrupting his time, that he had to get to this show or anything like that. He had more than enough admiration and respect for the fans that if that's all I needed was a couple seconds to stand with him and snap a picture, he was more than happy to do that. And you felt the enthusiasm and energy off of him, that every time I ran into him at a show or wherever, it's him. I mean, it's synonymous with him. He is always upbeat and over the top. So,
Well, it seems like out of all the shows I've been at in the last couple years, that all those quote-unquote old-timers or veterans are all like that, all gracious, all more than happy to oblige you in any way possible if it's within their power and time. And now, for me, I'm starting to see that, especially of Alex Ross, the one time I met him, Jeff Johns when I met him, Jim Lee. They were the same way, and I hope that continues. I kind of feel like there was a point in there where artists and writers weren't always like that. Somewhere in the middle there for some of the smaller shows I was at.
That's where I have the biggest faux pas with what we had talked about before, as people just walking up to a creator and slapping a huge pile of books in front of him.
Oh,
here, sign them. Don't even talk to them. Don't even thank them. Yep. That thank you for what you're doing in the industry. I really enjoy your stuff. Blah, 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 blah. Acknowledge him as a human being. I can understand that. Why would you want to do that? They are people,
Me and Jamie went up to Marv Wolfman, and he was trying to open some package of cookies, and we talked for like 2 minutes about these cookies, how great these cookies were. Just one of the funniest, coolest moments I was ever standing in front of a creator, and he's just, I just love these. I can't work without these, or something like that. It was just hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, you can see Stan when he goes to the premieres of the movies, and he has nothing to do with the movie, except he's executive producer, and people love him. They're screaming for him, and, they know him. They know him.
Well, in order to help us in our discussion, we decided to get an expert on the phone who can hopefully lend a little insight into some of Stan's role in his career and stuff.
Contributions.
So let's go to the phones.
Hello,
Hello, Stan.
Brian Demore.
How you doing, Stan?
Well, that depends how you treat me.
I'll be very kind. Stan, with me
And
here.
I'm doing fine.
Okay, that's great. With me here is Jamie, Shane, Kevin, and Peter.
Wow, a whole group.
Yes, we're Comic Geek Speak, and we're very happy to have you with us on our show.
I'm very happy to be had.
First, we just want to wish you a couple-week early happy birthday.
Well, thank you. It's very nice.
To start off, just a couple days ago, we had the pleasure of speaking with Gene Colan, and he told us a story about the first time he met you.
Mm-hmm.
He claims that you were wearing a beanie.
With a propeller on.
That's right, complete with moving propeller.
Well, who would wear a beanie without a propeller? Might as well get your money's worth if you're wearing a beanie.
Did you often have such fun times at the office?
Yes, I didn't wear a beanie all that often, but I tried to make the office as much fun as possible.
Stan, this is Jamie. I was just wondering, since Gene had so many wonderful stories to tell about you, I was wondering if you had one or two stories you could tell us about Gene.
Well, nothing about him personally, mainly about the fact that I loved his artwork. I'm trying to think of any anecdotes about Gene. And unfortunately, when he had been in the business earlier, I think. The company he had been working with had either gone out of business or they had to let go of all the artists or something. And that really hurt him. It affected him. And when he came to work at Marvel, I think he was always kind of concerned that that might happen again. And I was always trying to make him feel better by telling him, I consider you one of our best artists. I wouldn't let you go unless the whole bottom dropped out of things. Because I thought he was just terrific. He was a great guy to work with, dependable, creative, imaginative, and not at all temperamental. He was terrific.
Stan, I just finished... Excuse me, I just recently finished reading the first 20 issues of the Avengers, and the one thing that I couldn't help but notice was that every sentence that wasn't a question ended with an exclamation point. Now, what was your reason for having so many exclamation points?
Well, I thought it made things look more exciting. See, I'm a very excitable and exciting guy. I mean, if I write to somebody, write a letter, and I say hello, I'm tempted to put an exclamation point. Hey, hello! Now, seriously, though, one reason I started doing that, in the early days, the reproduction in comics wasn't that good. And sometimes you'd put a period at the end of the sentence, and when the book printed, you couldn't even see the period. An exclamation point was easier to see. There was less chance of it sort of fading out in the printing. So it started out as just a reason to let the reader know it was the end of the sentence. But I kind of like exclamation points. In fact, I love exclamation points.
Pow, right?
That's right.
Stan, this is Kevin.
Hi, Kevin.
How you doing? When you were doing the work at Marvel and doing all the chores, handling the writing and the plotting and the editor in chief and when
an art director.
Excuse me. When did it ever was there one specific moment when it really kind of popped for you that this was really taken off and where it was kind of surreal for you as an experience for what was going on?
Well, I don't know that it was one moment, but after we did the Fantastic Four and then the Hulk and then Spider-Man and then the X-Men, and they were all doing well and we were getting a ton of fan mail, I wouldn't need a brick wall to fall on me to realize that, hey, we're on to something here. So, as I say, I can't remember the exact moment, but after the first 2 or 3 or 4 books that we did in the so-called new Marvel age, it wasn't hard to realize that we've made an effect on things. We've had an effect on things.
Stan, this is Shane. I just want to tell you that one of my fondest memories as a young child is watching the cartoons and hearing your narrations to them in the beginning. That was one of the things that always steered me into watching Marvel cartoons.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Nobody actually tuned in for the cartoons. It was just to hear me speak, of course.
That's right.
But I love doing it. I'm really a ham at heart, and just like I love doing these little cameos in the movies.
Well, you have the unique situation of being the only voice in the world of comics that's immediately recognizable.
Yes, because I got this ridiculous nasal quality in my voice. I'll never sound like Laurence Olivier.
Stan, this is Peter. As a lifelong DC fan, I have to say that your presence in the bullpen and like Shane said on the cartoons, it did make me aware of Marvel, and it just made me say, you know what, Marvel, for me, I had to go and I had to read these stories and I had to find out who was Stan Lee, and I think because of the way you included everybody, the readers and the fans of comics, there was no more, oh, I'm only a DC and I'm only a Marvel guy. It really, for me, I had to read everything.
I like your attitude. Well, I tried to make the books friendly. I tried to make the readers feel that they weren't just readers, but that we were all friends and we were all kind of enjoying something that maybe the rest of the world wasn't aware of. You know, we had our own little secret reading these books.
And it definitely, and the respect that you gave DC too, just, you know, you put everybody on equal footing, and that's just, I as a reader appreciated that.
Yeah, well, that's because I'm a very wonderful person.
Stan, we know about the creation of your characters and your influence on Marvel and comics, but what does Stan Lee do on his downtime?
What is downtime?
Come on, you have to have a day where you just, you know, that you have to yourself. What do you do?
Well, in all honesty, I really never had a day to myself unless I forced myself to have it, because I was working all the time. I mean, and I'm not saying that complainingly. I loved what I did, but if it was a Saturday or a Sunday, there was a book or two that I had to write, or there was stuff I had to proofread, or there were artists I had to call and discuss an outline with, or sometimes what I would do is I just bite the bullet and say, I'm going away for 4 days. I don't care what happens. And my wife and I would fly down to Florida or something for a few days. But that was very rare. Mostly I just didn't have downtime. Just like today, I don't have any.
Too busy doing interviews, right?
Well, when I said today, I didn't specifically mean today. I meant now.
Right.
The life I lead now, I'm just as busy as I was then, and I love it.
So you're keeping busy. What are you doing these days?
Well, this company that I formed, POW Entertainment, and POW, of course, stands for Purveyors of Wonder. I know you've already guessed that. We're doing movies and television shows and DVDs, and we're even doing little episodes for cell phones. You know, we call them mobisodes. Episodes that'll be shown on a mobile phone. And they're very big, you know, in Asia, and they're coming over here. Here in this country, you see people all the time walking around holding phones to their ears. Well, in Asia, people walk around holding the phone in front of them. They're looking at the screen because there are all kinds of little cartoons and little entertainment things on the screen. So everybody is bumping into everybody. They don't see where they're going. It's very funny. And as I say, starting sometime next year, you'll be seeing that happening here with greater frequency, and you'll see a lot of the things that we're working on the mobile phones.
You mean people bumping into each other as you're bringing it?
Yeah, it's a shame. You be sure you have a lot of Band-Aids with you.
So, Stan, in all your years working in the comics industry, being involved in all the great stories with all the great creators, there's got to be at least one funny story that happened at some point. Can you think of any?
There's probably a million. I can't think of any at the moment. You got to give me a hint or mention something to get me going.
I don't know, Joe. I don't have any. I wasn't trying to steer you in any direction. Like Joe Kubert told us a story about some editor that he worked for once that climbed out of the window of the office and hijacked an electrical line to get free electricity for the office, and just things like that were just.
Oh no, I don't recall that ever happening. I wasn't there at the time. Now, the only thing I can remember of that type, there was a time that the guys made a big fuss over this. I never knew why, but many years ago when I was doing a lot of writing, something happened throughout the city, and the electricity just. The mayor must have blown a fuse, but for many hours at night there was no electricity, so there were no electric lights in most of the city, and certainly where I lived. And I had a lot of writing to do, so my wife had a lot of candles, and I burned them. And I had like a dozen candles all around my typewriter, and I wrote whatever I had to write by candlelight, and I brought it in the next morning, and everybody said, "Oh, you wrote that stuff by candlelight. I don't believe it. Oh, wow." And it was no big deal, but the way people talked about it, you'd think that I was the hero of the world. And, of course, I let them talk. I loved it. But I can't, there's probably a million things, but I can't really think of anything specific now.
Stan, out of all the stories you've written over your lengthy career, what one storyline sticks out in your mind that you'd like people to look back and say that was Stan Lee at his greatest?
Oh, probably every one of them. I don't know. There were a lot of Silver Surfers I wrote that I liked, and there were a lot where I had little messages. There was a Thor story where, in those days, we were worried about hippies who they were trying to not be part of the civilization as it was. They wanted to just cut out. And I had Thor give a bunch of kids a lecture saying, or was it Captain America? It was either Thor or Captain America, I don't remember. But he was saying that if you don't like the way the world is, you're not going to cure anything by dropping out. What you got to do is plunge in and do the best you can to change it. I thought that was really brilliant philosophy. But mainly in the Silver Surfer, I got a lot of little ideas and thoughts across that. There was one line I wrote. I can't even remember what book it was. It may have been the Silver Surfer. Somebody is talking about the supreme power, some villain maybe, I don't remember, but the most powerful menace of all or so. And the hero says, there's only one all-powerful being, and his greatest weapon is love. And I'm not a particularly religious guy, but I thought that was a beautiful line.
Definitely.
That is beautiful. With when you were writing all the characters and co-creating all the ones that, for how many years, what was it like when you brought guys like Roy Thomason and Jerry Conway and gave them the writing chores and had them take over your characters for you? What was that like for you as an experience?
Well,
it's like handling off your children.
A two-edged sword. On one hand, I resented having to give these things up because I loved them. On the other hand, I was lucky as hell that I had a guy like Roy Thomas or a Jerry Conway who were good enough and talented enough that I could give these things to them and not worry about them.
Well, Stan, we really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, and well, you should.
It is kind of, we're trying to be all cool, but we're all just like have some butterflies in our stomach.
Oh, let me ask you, what is this for? I forget. Who are you? What are you doing this for?
We're a podcast. Are you familiar with what they are? It's
not pod. That's those little things you carry around with the music.
Correct. And
everybody's going to hate me. They'll want to hear music, and I'll be interfering.
No, well, a podcast is basically a radio show that's put into an MP3 so people can listen to on the computer or on their iPod. And
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've been around for almost a year now, and we have about 2,500 listeners, and they all love comics, and they're all excited to hear you, I'm sure.
Well, I hope so. You mean 2,500 people are going to listen? And I should have been more careful about what I said. Maybe we ought to do it over and let me think a little more.
Okay, we can do that.
Anytime.
But that sounds good. So that's what this is. This is my first podcast, as far as I know. It's
Excellent.
great.
Yeah, it's fun.
All right. Well, listen, congratulations, guys. I enjoyed it. You're good interviewers. And when you get about 100,000, call me again. We'll do another one.
Thanks so much.
Stan, we can't.
Okay, guys. Lots of luck to you.
Take care.
Right. Bye.
Bye.
So long.
Okay, that was officially the greatest moment of my life.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, how about it?
Wow. Just to hear him say your name.
Oh my God! I
like-
almost fell out of my chair when he said that.
Hey.
Butterflies are still going in my stomach.
Oh, wow.
For me, it was when he started saying Spider-Man and Thor.
Yeah.
And Iron. I was like,
Yeah.
yes, there he goes. He's saying
Right.
them all. Yeah.
I mean, you've heard it in multiple interviews and sound clips and stuff, but to hear him talk to you and mention
Coming
that
through
stuff.
my own freaking headphones. It's so weird.
And you know, it's same, exact time out on the West Coast where he's saying it live right from his office,
Yeah.
I know.
talking to us in little
Wow.
old Reading, PA.
Who'd ever think? You know what I mean? It's just, I don't know. It's kind of surreal in a way.
Very surreal.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the whole time I'm looking at my list of questions, and then I'm hearing him speak, and I'm like, is this real? I don't know. I don't know what to ask him next. Even though I have a list in front of me, I'm like, I don't. Oh,
Yeah.
You sit there and die, bye, die.
Yeah.
yeah. I was.
And he's still the same. He's still, all the things where he's like, well, that's the way I meant it to be. And
Yeah,
that's
right.
it's just he's still the same.
He doesn't have to come up with some, super answer to anything. He can just
No.
this is it.
And that voice, I mean, it's so recognizable.
Yeah.
The first second, it's like, oh, that's
Yeah,
him.
It did.
yeah.
It made my heart skip a beat. And I was like, when I heard him say your name,
Yeah,
I was like, whoa.
that's him.
I'm almost like,
Yeah.
is that him? Is that really him?
That was him.
Wow.
That's cool.
By the way, for those of you listening, Jamie had to cut out. He had to go to work at the comic shop. He got a temporary leave of absence to be here for the Stan phone call, and then he
He
had
was AWOL.
to.
I'm
Get
sure.
right
I'm
back.
sure he would be just as thrilled, if not more so.
Yeah, it was. That's a gift right there.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
A big thanks to
Huge.
John Morrow at Tomorrow's Publishing for helping me set this up. He sent an email to Stan for me, and Stan was kind enough to oblige. So, John, we owe you.
Yeah, big.
Big time.
That's phenomenal. I know.
And that's recorded for posterity.
Let's
It's
just
going to be
settle.
burned into a CD on my iPod, on the computer, any
That's right,
multiple copies I can think
in a
of.
safety deposit box. Multiple
Medically
copies.
sealed.
That's right.
When my kids get old enough, here, look at who Daddy got to talk to for a few minutes.
Wow.
Wow. The audience.
I know.
The audience is probably like, yeah, that's okay, that's cool. But
Yeah.
for us, it's like, oh,
I don't care,
what to
man.
say.
It's an experience. It definitely is an experience.
Something I never ever thought would happen doing this. I mean, we always say how much fun we're having. We always think, okay, well, here's the next level of people we're talking to. We never thought, well, now we've talked to Stan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Everybody out, the listeners out there will have to email us. Well, I'm sure they will.
I was just going to say.
Yeah.
And just see what their reaction is to what we how we maneuvered
Presented it.
things.
Yeah,
how we
how we-
presented.
Put this all together.
Yeah.
Not act like a bumbling idiot on the telephone.
Yeah.
It's a sign of at least a slight improvement in our interview skills when we don't come out sounding like complete asses.
I know. There's just so many things you'd love to talk to him
Oh
about.
yeah.
That's
yeah.
the problem, is how do you even narrow it down? I mean, and
Well, and-
he's been asked so many
Exactly,
questions so many
yeah.
times, we don't want to just ask the same question. So
Plus, you don't want to ask him specifics. Because, I mean, mind to God, the guy's 83 years old. He's been writing comics for Lord knows how long. And even though as much of an impact the characters he wrote and helped co-create and all that, you can't remember all those details.
Oh, no.
So, I mean, you don't want to ask questions like that because it's...
Yeah.
Well, better now than later.
Yeah, I was going to
Yeah,
say.
I mean, earlier.
Yeah.
I'm glad they waited. Thanks,
They-
Greta
but,
Eli.
but even they like it.
Yeah, they're putting them their
Yeah,
2 cents
their
in.
2 cents. And everyone loves their 2 cents too, boy.
yeah,
I know. It's almost
Big
like,
sigh of
what do you do
relief.
now?
I know.
We take a step back, take
I
a
could
couple
say something,
tums,
but I don't want don't.
Smoke them if you got them.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's your... You've read a lot of Stan Lee, Kevin, so what's your favorite Stan Lee story?
Wow, favorite Stan Lee story.
Like we know we know the Spider-Man, but like, could you pick one that has all the things that you like about Stan Lee, or like?
Wow. I mean, one of the first things that pops into my head is the Galactus story in Fantastic Four. That to me was something that, when I read that, of course, I wasn't around to read that when it came out, but reading it in the 70s or the late 70s, still having him as a presence at Marvel Comics, it kind of blew my mind. I mean, and I'm sure that's what happened to everybody that read it when it came out. It was just so out there, but so damn good, and such a unique a presence in a comic to do what he did in those issues, introduce the Watcher and the Silver Surfer and Galactus, to have all that involved there, and that it was just phenomenal. That whole world, life-threatening threat.
And to have a multi-part story.
Right, which was nice. It was a 3-part, story, basically. And so that always sticks out to me as like a singular story, I guess. And his Silver Surfer was kind of cool. I read some of those with John Buscema, and that's what was kind of cool about the Silver Surfer. It was very philosophical. And it was kind of like the outsider viewing, us as human beings, yes, and that was kind of interesting to hear that. But I mean, with Spider-Man, for me, it's just how it all just kept playing out, from issue 1 up until 100, when he finally took a break for the first time. To see that body of work and to read that and experience it on so many levels was just, that to me just floored me. To be able to write a character like that for that long a time. You talk about big creators being on a book. To write 100 issues straight while he's writing, 12, 15 other books, and still have such a phenomenal impact and have a great feel for all the characters and supporting characters. To me, there's no comparison.
I was very surprised to hear that he seemed to remember Silver Surfer stories more than some other things. I personally have never been fond of the Silver Surfer, and I've never read much of it. But now that he said that, I'm like, well, maybe
especially
I'll
that
get
comment.
Some of those essentials and see.
Well, they just released.
They do have. They just released it.
Released it. Okay.
Yeah, it was out before, and now they've put another printing out that you can buy that now. It is. I forget how many issues that run. It didn't last long, the first run, but it was enough to.
I thought it was the complete thing.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that essential is the complete run of that.
Oh, wow, well, that's good.
That's what I'm saying. It's not like this was like an 80 issue or 100 issue storyline. It lasted how many issues are in that essential?
I'd be very intrigued by that.
Have any of you read that graphic novel he did with Mobius?
No, I didn't read that.
Because I love that guy's artwork, and it's funny because the one graphic novel that I have is, which it might be the last one that he did for Marvel, was that Silver Surfer with the Enslavers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's like he just keeps coming back to Silver Surfer. He really likes that character.
I think it's his way of, putting his reflection on what he feels and of humanity and the things. Right. I mean, take it in context when these stories were being written, when he was doing what he was doing. I mean, look at how life was. He had the whole turmoil of the 60s with the drugs and the love and the peace and the war and
assassination.
I mean, there were so many things going on as far as an upheaval of humanity. And to do all this in the meantime, that's why I think Silver Surfer stands out for him, because it was his way of kind of stepping back and kind of showing his viewpoint and philosophy towards humanity. And doing that through a character who basically represented that aspect, that here's an alien coming through and experiencing humanity for the first time. And that's why kind of the Galactus story was kind of cool, because here comes this character who's devoted himself to Galactus as a herald, and he comes to Earth and realizes, this is such a wonderful race. I can't destroy them. I can't allow it to happen. So, I mean, that speaks volumes to know that while he's writing these stories that, humanity's like uprooting itself, and
it's a good thing Kirby slipped that little character in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it was just a whim. It was just him drawing, and he said, "Well, a cosmic being like Galactus should have a herald," and just drew this little thing. And Stan saw it and went, "Oh."
there's always been some speculation. I don't think it's ever been confirmed that Kirby has said that it was kind of like Galactus was like a representative in comics as like God, and Silver Surfer's like the fallen angel. So that's kind of the premise. He looked at it while he was drawing those books and co-creating and putting these characters in there, which I never really looked at it that way until years later when I heard that. I was like, wow. I mean, that just makes it that much more powerful.
That's why he had the big G on his chest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's me. It's the
G
big
money.
G.
A big G.
G unit.
I mean, if you've never read Marvels by Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross, I think it's issue 3 that they take a look at that.
The whole Fantastic Four Galactus story, yeah.
From the everyday man point of view.
Yeah, no 4 issues capture the essence and spirit of the Marvel Universe like that 4-issue miniseries.
That is one of my favorite miniseries ever.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And if you're at a convention, I
They're
don't
in
know
50 cent
how they are
Yeah.
50-cent boxes.
I don't
and
understand.
It is the they should be
Just
priced,
the covers alone are worth
They
that.
should be priced at $50 each just on principle. Because
Was that a huge run or something? Because I found
I don't know.
I had the issues when it came out.
Yeah.
I sold them on eBay for a nice chunk, and then I bought them again in a dollar box somewhere.
Yeah.
Sold that for a nice chunk, and then again at
Bought
this was it no, it was at Philly, Wizard World Philly this year. Bought them again, sold them again.
Really?
And at that time I don't think I sold them for that much. This last one,
Yeah.
but you're right. I see them in 50 cents, and I pick them up because I feel I have to.
Yeah, it's almost
Yeah,
like
well, that's what I mean. I feel like I
they don't
can't-
belong there. You got to get them out of there.
Yeah.
They should be.
But no,
taken care
I
of and
never
treasured.
I never read a comic up to that point where I actually felt like I was part of the story. Like looking at it, like that one scene when those Sentinels come flying over that splash page, I felt that. I was like, whoa, Whereas seeing him in the comics before, I was like, okay, there's the Sentinels, and I understand that they're very powerful, and it's hard to beat them, and there's such a presence to them, but I never felt it like I did while I was reading those books and going like, wow, what is it like to be around when these things happen? Kurt Busiek really nailed it, and
I wanted to ask us here, is it even right to ask, do we all have our each favorite contribution? Like, not even specific characters, just things he did for the comic book industry. Do any of us have our favorite or our first fondest memory of what he did?
I don't know if it's a memory, but like I said before, I think my favorite thing that he did is involving the audience. I think that was important. And for me as a kid, that was cool. And again, in 1982, when the Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends came out, and hearing his voice, I knew who Stan Lee was when I was, 8 years old, but I didn't know who Stan Lee was, but I knew his voice. And then when I got older and started reading comics and I connected it, it was right there, and he was a friend to the comic reader. So if this comic says Stan Lee Presents, and I think Stan is my friend because I heard his voice as a kid, and he was nice to me, and he said nice things, and he was fun, then this comic is a good thing because this is from my friend.
yeah, it's like an association.
And that's the emotional reaction that I had to that, and that's why I think of him, and it was so amazing to talk to him, because since I was 8 years old, I've thought of this guy as my friend, and
Yeah, and that's mine. I mean, when I talked to him about that is mine, because it was, as much as I like DC cartoons and all, he had such a presence about him in a way that DC didn't for their cartoons and other media, that you just couldn't help but feel like you were relating to him or felt closer to him in a personal situation.
absolutely.
I
was just curious, like
it's hard to when you put it in a thing like that. Like, what's my favorite thing that that stands out to me about? There's so many things that he contributed as far as me being a comic fan, growing up reading comics.
Well, and you certainly had more experience with him overall than me just hearing him really from the cartoon, other than anything else, because he wasn't writing comics at that time. I didn't read anything he wrote at that time.
Had you guys seen him or seen what he looked like before that happened?
No, I had only heard his voice. It
Okay.
wasn't until the 90s version where he actually came
yeah,
on.
okay.
But I associated his voice with pictures that I did see on books
Oh, okay.
out there. So, but there was a connection with that. But for me, it was hearing somebody from Marvel, and I'm like, all right, well, who's this? And then eventually picking up a comic. Oh, that's who that is. I know this guy.
Soapbox had a little picture of his little drawing of him.
Caricature of him.
And seeing it at the title page, Stan Lee Presents. Oh, okay. Well, God, I knew him from way back when I was a kid.
For me, it's just. I guess if I had to say anything, I'm just so enamored and taken by his creative force. That what he has contributed. There's no other individual that I can sit and think and be able to have them duplicate what he has done. To be able to write and co-plot. I mean, beyond doing all the other stuff as far as what he had to do as far as editorial and art director and handle, lettering and overviewing all that stuff. I mean, just to be able to consistently write continuity and have character growth with all these characters. Like I said, I never really sat down and figured out how many books a month he was writing, but to do that for such a long time and to create or even co-create, and I'm not trying to slight anybody, but having involvement with creating characters that they all were successful and all viewed as wonderful characters and they all made an impact on the comic industry has never been duplicated, and you never know if it ever will be.
I know that DC did that Stan Lee Presents thing where he reimagined characters and all. I would love to see an alternate reality where instead of starting out at Marvel, starting out at DC, and just how radically different I think that company would have been if he would have written the same number of books or gotten the same start there, just how different the world would be if that would have happened. Because I can't imagine it. There's no way we would be looking at the same kind of DC universe we would be now. It would have been so much more realistic, so much more personal and serious than what it was all through that time until the 80s.
Peter would hang himself then.
I mean, somebody, if it wasn't Stan, somebody would have done it.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's a given. Somebody would have. Because, I mean, the artist equivalent to Stan Lee is obviously Jack Kirby for what his creative force. But he didn't deal with the business side and
art direct and put people on, pick people to be on books and to handle all that stuff is just
But like those reimagined books, I mean, there's a distinct difference between reimagining something that you've heard about for the last 50 years than creating it 50 years ago. And it boggles my mind to see to try and figure out how radically different the world would be.
And look what had happened to the comic industry in a whole that that DC picked up on what Marvel was doing, and then you saw things like, you had Stan do the Harry Osborn with drugs, which was not accepted by the Comics Code Authority, and they published it anyway, and then almost a year later you have Green Hour and Green Lantern with Speedy doing drugs, and taking it on another step, and so you can kind of see the influence that they had, and you saw the change in DC's characters then. You saw a deeper, darker Batman. You saw, more things being involved with them as characters and people, as individuals, rather than just being heroes and having a secret identity. So it raised the bar, and DC stepped up, and then DC took a hold for a while, and then Marvel kind of, so it's always been that kind of back and forth, and each company, I should say, raises the bar, and the next company then strives to make it, to take the reins again for a period of time, and then the next company will do the same thing.
And we've said it, Peter said it, he always showed the competition such respect.
You can poke fun and have a blast with them, but you can still treat them with respect.
Yep.
And that's why he did everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, and he did it in such a wonderful and magical way that it really shows us what he is as a human being outside of comics. See what happens when you have things keyed up?
DJ D. Coming at you.
Oh, no.
All right. Time to stuff the Rios. This one's from Marcin Walensky. Question number 1. Your independent question. In Robert Kirkman's Invincible, what are the names of the 2 blue ogres who have stolen Xboxes, dug up the Immortal, and been recruited by Angstrom Levy?
Abbott and Costello.
the Mauler twins. Okay.
Close.
Isn't that what I said?
Yeah. DC question. Peter knows what Shazam stands for when Billy Batson says it, but what does the acronym stand for when Secret Society baddie Black Adam says Shazam?
Jesus.
Suck my.
Shane doesn't know it either.
One of the A's is Ammon.
The strength of Ammon.
Is it Heru? Heru, I think is an H.
No.
No. Hold on.
This is a good question, though.
Yeah, I do have to say.
Crap. I
have
knew
to
this.
say I couldn't
I knew
answer
this
it.
a long time ago. I don't remember it anymore. Z-A-M. Nah, I'm not going to get it. I only knew that one.
Go ahead, Kevin, if you have a guess.
No, I'm just asking. Are they more Egyptian based? That the names are
Yeah.
like Horus and Ammon.
Horus was the H.
Wow.
I know. I can't think.
Shazam. Oh, a Z just blows me away for an Egyptian name.
Because they weren't all the. I don't think they're all like the. Not. I don't want to say good gods, but you know what I mean. Like I think some of them were steered to. But I can't remember.
All right. The stamina of Shu,
Shoo.
the swiftness of Horus, the strength of Ammon, the wisdom of Zahuti, the power of Aton, and the courage of Mayhen.
Wow. That's cool though.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, Marvel question. Last one, Peter.
Come on.
Who did Sean Cassidy and Black Tom Cassidy fight over, and what happened to her?
Some of these questions are like in what issue, you know? It's Sean's daughter, Teresa, I think her name is. Or are they talking about the first wife that Sean Cassidy had?
I don't know. You have to tell me. You can't ask me.
All right, I'm going to say Teresa Cassidy. I think that's her name. Her code name is Siren.
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 She's not a druggie.
Yeah.
She's not a needle.
And if it's not that, it's his first wife, Mauve. But that's too early. That's too early. And I'm going to say, and what happened to her? I don't know. She went bonkers for a little bit, or she was undercover. Did she actually go with Tom? Did she actually live with him for a little bit? Did he raise her? I don't remember. I don't know.
The answer is Maeve Rourke,
You were right.
mother of Siren, and she died in an IRA bombing.
Wow.
Rats.
I didn't realize was he back. Tom, I guess he was back during
Yeah.
that time.
Yeah, he goes back further than you think. I mean,
Oh, you know what? I was thinking. I said her name was Mauve. How'd you pronounce it?
Maeve.
Maeve. Thank
Maeve.
you. I was picturing Hank Pym's wife got like abducted or something, like kidnapped and shoved in a car and like drove something like that. So I was confusing that event with this one, but I got the name. But
Yeah.
it's pretty good.
So, I don't know. I think you were stumped.
He wins.
Well,
Yeah.
I was
But you
stuck.
said Maeve, but you stuck with Teresa
Yeah.
instead. So
So you've been stumped, Peter.
All right.
So
We need to get a
Marcin
stump.
Walensky, you stumped him. Congratulations.
You're gonna get a ball of lint. What's our
no prize?
I don't
No
even know
prize.
what our prizes are anymore.
we'll dig up something cool.
Yeah, we have a couple issues we can throw his way.
Send us your snail mail.
Good questions, though. I like that Black Adam question.
And that's the thing. Like when for the trivia game that I did, that's actually
One of the questions.
well, it's I do it. I think I say what Black Adam receives stamina from,
Okay.
and you have to get So at one point I knew it, but I couldn't remember.
Oh,
There's
so
too
you
much.
would ask us those questions.
I don't
But
need to know him if I'm the
You-
games
I was
master.
going to say, he's got the answer in front of
Yeah,
him.
what the hell? What do I need to know him for?
ay, ay, ay.
Even with my Egyptian mythology, I couldn't think of a Z for an Egyptian.
yeah.
That was blowing me away. All I kept thinking of was Zathura.
All I could think of was Ra.
Well, Amun-Ra, I knew. And Horus, of course. But I was trying to think of the other ones.
Horus,
and trying
of
to think.
Of course.
Horus, of course.
And sadly, that was from Stargate that I'm thinking Ra, of all things.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Think of Indiana Jones and the Staff of Ra.
A staff of Ra, yep.
I wasn't even thinking of that.
Do you
All
want
right, you want to do? What?
no, wait,
Okay.
do you have a voicemail or something?
I was going to do a call me,
Oh yeah, let's do
Alright.
that. Let's break it up.
but
We've
we
been
can't.
talking for a
We
while.
can't tell them that we talked to Stan because we
No,
can't
no,
let the
no,
cat
no.
out of the bag
That's
because
fine.
he'll get on the forum and blab.
No,
can't be
we
having that.
want no hint of this.
All right. So we're calling Daryl Taylor.
What's the area code?
Yeah, Eric.
It's New York City.
New York.
Thank you.
Do you want to give your shout out real quick?
Yeah, I'll give a shout out to the Crank cast, Crank and Mike, and they had their announcer, female Jen, on the show, episode 9. They read my fanboy email that I sent to them, so a big thank you to them. And if you get a chance, listen to their show. It's a lot of fun. I have a good
Episode
time. 9. Episode 9 is my email.
One
Daryl.
ringy dingy.
Hello?
Hello, Daryl.
Yeah.
Hey, Daryl. This is Brian Deemer and the CGS crew. How are you?
I'm all right.
How you doing?
Hello.
I just got off the train, just got on the bus. I'm sitting here reading a Daredevil comic right now.
Excellent.
Which Daredevil?
I'm reading the Golden Age arc. I got the trade.
That's a very good arc.
It is good.
Yeah. So I've just been catching up on, rereading old arcs of DD until I get my other order in of Decalogue.
Okay.
Cool. So where do you call home?
Queens, New York.
Nice.
What
Peter,
part of Queens? What part of Queens?
I'm on Liberty Avenue. It's actually considered Dallas, Queens. So.
Okay, cool. Where do you shop in New York? What store do you hit?
My shop is Midtown, the one that's right on 43rd and 8th.
The Times Square one?
Yeah, because I work at the library on 40th and 5th Avenue, so me and my buddy Pedro, we just walk straight down there.
Cool.
Excellent.
What do you do at the library?
We do the ordering section, so I work on ordering all the books for all the branches that are in New York.
Ordering any comic books and graphic novels?
Well, we have them at my job, but I don't handle those. I usually do the novels and all the new books, like the mysteries, all the popular adult books. I do those.
Cool.
But we do have a lot of trades and stuff that we get in, so I get to take a little peek.
Nice.
So I caught a lot of different things, like we order Watchmen. We get a lot of that. Quite a few Daredevil coming through.
Do you think you'd break? Do you think you'd break the library's budget if you were doing the ordering?
Oh, I would kill the budget. I would kill it. There's a whole lot of stuff that I would love to order there that they don't even know about, but they just order whatever's popular. Like if it's Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, they just order it.
Cool.
Hey, well, it's something. At least it gives the kids something to read,
Yeah, it does. It does.
So what's your favorite? Who's your favorite character?
My favorite character is kind of a tie between Batman and
Moon Knight.
I think Spider-Man, because my first comic that I remember, my mother ordered me a Hulk and a Spider-Man comic, and it was back when I think John Romita Jr. Senior was drawing it, I think. And it was a long time ago. I think she ordered it for me when I was 7 or 8. So I just always had comics around.
What year was that?
We're not trying to date you.
Or
But
decade, or
I'm 32 now.
I'm thinking
so.
that's like Amazing Spider-Man, like 119 and 120.
He said he's 32 now, so.
That could
I'm
very.
32 now, so.
That probably is it. Because Amazing Spider-Man 119 and 120 was when he went up to Canada and fought the Hulk, and John Romita Sr. drew those issues. So that's probably what it was.
I think I have some of those. I know I remember the Juggernaut issues.
That was
I
229.
remember, but
Kevin's encyclopedic knowledge of Spider-Man.
Kevin's in info mode. That was 229. Rain
I,
mode.
I can't remember the year though, but I think it was back that far though. I know it was back farther than that.
Well, you figure you're right. You're 32, and -8. That means you were 62 at the time, and that was. Let me see. So.
62?
No, he's born in
I'm
73.
I'm joking. Jesus, roll with it, will you?
Have you consistently collected comics and no break in the 90s or anything like that?
I didn't have a comic book shop by me, so I could only get stuff that was on the newsstand. So, like, every now and then, you go to 7-Eleven or you go to the store, you beg your parents to buy you one, to pick you up a comic or whatever. So it was erratic, and then I stopped getting it until I went to high school, and then I became friends with a guy who, he always went to the comic book shops in Manhattan. He found one, and he took me to my first real one. Because I went with my mother when I was about 9 or 10, when we lived in Flushing. There was a comic book store there where they had all old issues. And, you just go in the bin and you just pick up comics for like 20, 30 cents or something like that. And you just pick up a whole bunch. But it wasn't like a run. You just had to pick up whatever was in the bin and whatever was cool. And my mother used to try to rush me because she wasn't in the comics, so she would tell me, you have about 15, 20 minutes, pick what you're going to pick, and let's go. So, that's how that went. But I think I really got into it in the 90s. I think that's when, when everything was with Image and all that, that's when I really started to collect it because I was buying it on my own.
Yeah, well, that couldn't have been the issues 119 and 120 of Amazing It, because if...
No, that was later on. I mean,
yeah, that was when
my mother was ordering.
Yeah.
That's when I was getting it. But when I started buying it on my own, that was when it was the 90s craze. Like, it was just starting, really.
Right.
When I started to really go there on a regular basis and buy comics on my own.
That's kind of nice. I mean, to hear somebody that was getting into it in the 90s, because we hear so much where everybody stopped at the 90s. But
I bought everything. I bought Thor, I bought Iron Man. I bought so much stuff that when I look back on it, it's like, why did I buy that? Why did I buy Thunderstrike? I don't understand what I was thinking.
Are you on the forum?
Yeah, I'm Prodigy 1 on the forum.
Okay. Yeah.
Cool.
Excellent. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Oh, and I just wanted to make a shout out to my fiance, Carolyn Graham, soon to be Carolyn Taylor, because I asked her to marry me on Thanksgiving, the day before Thanksgiving.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you. So I just wanted to say hi and that I love her, and I'm going to get her to listen to this podcast.
Excellent. It's episode 83.
Hello?
Yeah.
So when will it be out?
Monday.
Next week? Or?
Monday.
Monday? Okay. Well, I'll definitely listen because it keeps me awake at work.
we think you'll enjoy this one.
We'll definitely listen to it because I got involved in it with Savage Dragon when you did Eric Lawson's interview.
Cool.
And that's when I first found out about Eric Lawson, when you did the Eric Lawson interview. And that's when I found out about it on the Brian Bendis forum. And then from there, I just listened to all the other episodes up until now.
Great.
Excellent.
Are you still enjoying it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
I just listened to it today.
Good.
Cool.
Just listened to Second Chance.
Nice.
Second Chance issue.
Cool.
Great.
So
all right, man.
I love the show.
Well, have a good night.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
So long.
Bye-bye.
That was cool.
Riding the bus.
Little does he know.
Yeah.
I know.
He's gonna be like, oh, I can't wait to hear that on Monday.
Right.
What? You didn't mention it to me.
I want to hear that. I want to hear when I say all that to my girlfriend. Then meanwhile, he's not even gonna think about it because he's gonna be like, Stan Lee.
Wow. Especially, man, I'm reading Daredevil. Yeah, I'm a Marvel. I'm like, ooh, perfect.
So shall we do a quick off the rack?
Off the rack.
Off the rack.
Why not?
We can do that.
All right. Who wants to start? I never start.
I never started.
I'll start.
Go.
I'll start. Because we talked to Stan, I'll do Marvel. It's not too recent, but I read the Stormbreaker, the saga of Beta Ray Bill, the Michael Avon Oeming and Andre DeVito 6-issue miniseries that was traded.
Came out after Thor ended.
Yeah, it was pretty good. It wasn't Simonson. I mean, Beta Ray Bill will always be associated with Simonson, and But the story was fairly interesting. Parts of it were a little confusing because it dealt with a lot of cosmic stuff and a world trapped in an energy thing, and it was okay. What exactly am I reading here? But it delved into the home world of Beta Ray Bill and how he's perceived as the champion, and there's an Alpha Ray. And so that was interesting. Oh, he's Beta because there was one before him, and so that it delved into some history that was pretty fascinating. I mean, it wasn't like a rip snorting wow, this is like the greatest story I ever read. But if you're a fan of Beta Ray Bill and of the Thor stories in general, this was kind of interesting. I mean, if you're into that, I would recommend it. It wasn't the worst comic I ever read, but it was pretty good. It was above average.
I want to read it because I love that stuff, and
I
was that kind of apprehensive
So
a little bit.
Yeah.
Give it a fricking.
So now I get to hear somebody that read it and kind of enjoyed it. And did the ending kind of tail off? I thought I remember hearing somebody saying something that read it, and they said kind of the ending kind of went.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It was a little that whole when stuff gets too cosmic and stuff. I get a little like I don't really, it doesn't really do a whole lot.
You don't focus into what's all the parameters of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Specifics.
So it kind of, I would say the ending was not so exceptional, but again, it was worthy of a read if you are intrigued by the character of Beta Ray Bill.
Cool.
I'm going to go with Giffen DeMatteis McGuire's Defenders miniseries. Just as fun, just as quirky as all their other stuff that they've done together that I love. I haven't read the last issue yet, so I'm waiting to see how it all comes together. And I did just hear or read that they're doing a second miniseries now, so I'll be looking forward to that. But yeah, I'd definitely give it a 4 out of 5 for me. A freckin' slow. But
I read the first issue, the Nemo joke. I won't say anything more than that.
Yeah,
that was hysterical.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and they just have their way. I mean, I it doesn't matter what they do. If they do something, they could do Mickey Mouse sitting on the toilet. I don't care. I'm getting it if they're doing it because I just love that team. That's got to be my favorite creative team.
Well, I wonder how that's selling. I wonder how that.
Yeah.
Well, it must be selling pretty well if they're
doing a second
coming
one,
after him. Yeah, for another one.
Especially because that team is so associated with DC and JLA.
Yeah.
I wonder what Marvel fans think of
that type of book
of humor, which is not unknown to Marvel, and is
No.
not unknown to the Defenders either.
No,
They've had their share of wacky stories before these guys came on. So.
And for me, it was a no-brainer. I mean, I didn't even hesitate. But I always say I am more of a DC guy. But for something like that, I don't hesitate at all to follow some of my favorite people over to whatever company they're at, just to see what they do with it.
I mean, with the Defenders, at least they're doing it with the core initial characters, which I thought was kind of good.
Yep.
Because when I originally heard the concept of it, I kind of figured, well, the quirky and funky Defenders were always like, Valkyrie and, with a Nighthawk and and all that stuff. And I thought that's who they would probably do kind of like this more humor type book. And when I saw it with Doctor Strange, Silver Surfer, and the Hulk, I was like, that's cool. I'm actually, very intrigued to see how they handle these characters and in their style, but still make a good book with it.
And just the way McGuire drew them all on that first cover in that more group shot, man, Doctor
facial
Strange
expressions,
is just like, and to give Silver Surfer some, to me, more alien-esque feature, it just looked funny to me. I'm a little biased, but that's all right.
Cool.
I'm gonna go with Ultimate Spider-Man, actually. I recently just sat down and read the whole Warriors arc. And I know we've talked about this before, how I've kind of felt that Ultimate Spider-Man was kind of like sliding. It was kind of not getting as... it wasn't on my radar as it used to be, as like I used to look forward to that book each month, and that was kind of like my Spider-Man title I used to look forward to. And like the Hobgoblin story arc and stuff was me kind of... it just wasn't that fulfilling. But I must say that this story arc seemed to pick it up again, get the gang war going with Hammerhead being brought into it, and having that feel of the gang war and bringing heroes into it that you didn't see before, like Iron Fist and Shang-Chi and Moon Knight, and having Elektra come in and being the hired assassin, not just being this female running around and having the Black Cat in it, and kind of it was a nice mix of the books, and it was actually a good read, and kind of brought that energy back into what I kind of enjoyed with Ultimate Spider-Man.
Is part of that story the one issue with Moon Knight on the cover?
Yeah.
It's funny, Ben picked out that issue. I usually let him get a comic, and I was just looking through reading that last night, and I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I'll have to read that arc.
How was the take on Moon Knight?
It was actually kind of cool. I mean, I was very apprehensive after reading what Bendis had wrote in that Wizard, I guess it was 156 or whatever, when they talked about, that Moon Knight's this underused character and nothing's going on with him, but yet there's top creators who love the character, like Jeff Johns, Brian Michael Bendis, and Dave Finch and people like that, and how they kind of what their view is on the character and why they think he's so cool. And Bendis kind of mentioned that he wanted, if he would write the character, he would do this thing where each story arc would be like a different persona, of the, like taking the schizophrenia to a whole nother level. And I was kind of like, screw that. I don't want to read 4-issue story of Jake Lockley, and maybe have Moon Knight appear at the end a little bit or something, or I was kind of like, nah, and it's too schizo. I don't like that. I like where it's, I can understand why there are other personalities and such, but I started reading it, and he did him pretty cool. I mean, there is no such thing as Jake Lockley. He handles him, it's Mark Spector and Stephen Grant and Moon Knight, and he brought Marlene into it and gave the ultimate version of Marlene. No Frenchie, though. And he actually left me reading, at the end of the story, like wanting to know more about this ultimate Moon Knight. Like in I think it was the second to last part of it, he really kind of opened the door as to this ultimate version of Moon Knight. He had this scene, like it opened up with Mark Spector and Stephen Grant talking to each other, and they're having this dialogue, and next thing you know, you see this little girl, and she kind of intermixes in with the dialogue, and it's like, oh, it's time, and then next thing you know, you find out this is all happening in his mind. To me, it looked like it was something going on as a story, and that's how he kind of presented it. And then this little girl came into it, and then as it progressed, you realize you're witnessing him inside his own mind. And then it's like, as soon as he says it's time, then it like shows in present day, and it's like it's time, and he looks over and he presses his panel, and the panel opens up, and there's the Moon Knight costume behind the wall, and Moon Knight says it's time.
I did like that.
And I was like, wow, who's this little girl? What's going on here? So he didn't write him real schizo and real out there. It's just that you can tell that there's things going on, that something's happening with this character. So I was very, very intrigued by, and I kind of am. I'm like, well, what's I want to know more about this character, and I want to know what he's going to do. So I don't know if he's going to pop up in the near future, or if it's going to take off into something else, and he'll appear in the Ultimate universe. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was kind of cool. So,
how many freaking swears? What do you give it?
I want to say 3.5 to 4. I don't want to go too crazy because it didn't like floor me, but it was still better than what it's been for a little while. It has picked up. That storyline did pick up for me and did have that energy into it. So I guess I'll stretch it and give it a 4. But
freaking swell.
Yeah, a swell.
Well, I'm here to give a freaking swear to Mark Millar's 12-issue Wolverine run.
Quarter in the jar.
Mark Millar. People on the forum know about this because I wrote a review on it, and actually the review was picked up. The guy Mike over at Earth-2.net actually put it on his site.
Oh, cool.
On his main page, so I thought that was really cool. Thank you.
That's my quarter.
That's his quarter for the other night. For the other
Perez when I blew it.
Oh, that's right. It's just a cool Wolverine story. I mean, you don't have to know about any backstory. There's no Logan. There's no James Howlett. There's no, Weapon X. It's just Wolverine, and it's a kick-ass story, and you feel that Wolverine is the main character in his book. I know that sounds weird to hear or say, but unlike other stories where outside forces more dictate the what's going on, it's just so good. And the John Romita artwork, I put on there, it's not his best. It's not 150%. It's 110%, which is still good. I mean, it's still beyond what other people are doing today. And excuse me. The story is good. It doesn't get deep. There's, the villains are villains because they're villains. There's, no real motivation other than just being villainous. So, if you're not on the forum and you haven't read the review, if you want to read it, it's on the forum, or you can go to peterjohnrios.blogspot.com, shameless plug, or go to earth-2.net. It's also there. It's just that story, and it's actually on my list of best of for the year. It's vying for the best story of 2005.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's saying a lot.
Yeah.
Damn Skippy.
That it just was a good. I collected it, all the 12 issues, and I thought I would read maybe 2, or 3. I just kept going. I blew through all 12 issues. So.
And there's a lot of guest stars in the book, right?
Oh
yeah, half the Marvel Universe is in
and
there.
that's what I love about it. It plays in the Marvel playground.
But it still has a front and center Wolverine to it.
Yeah, and you know what? It has some of the best, I thought, usage of the Fantastic Four's powers. It was It was really cool the way they used Elektra. They used these B and C list villains that you recognize, but you can't remember from where. The main villain was even interesting. It's a good story. If you haven't read it, go get it. It's freaking sweet.
There are 2 hardcovers. The first 6 issues and the second 6 issues are 2 different hardcovers. So,
the trade hasn't been released for the second set yet, but the hardcover's out.
For the first one come out?
Yes.
Or was it just solicited?
No, the trade's out, and then the second hardcover came out.
Yeah, because I just
that was
got
just
that.
like a week
I
or
didn't get
so.
to read it yet, so I didn't even get the second half of the story yet.
But the trade hasn't been solicited for the second arc
I
yet.
actually think the second part of the second 6 issues are the better.
Wow, because the first 6 were awesome.
See, that's what I'm waiting too, because I didn't order the hardcover. I ordered the trade. So now I'm waiting yet because I still have to order the second trade.
Right.
If they come out with all 12 issues, I would recommend buying just.
See, that's what I'd love to. I wish they would have.
That's what I'm.
I wish they would have.
Probably. I mean, I have the issues, but
all 12, 13. Because the 13er is like that one story afterwards, but
Well,
it doesn't really pertain to the story that the first 12 do.
Right.
But I would love to see that all collected into an oversized hardcover like they did with all the other 12-issue stories.
Well, and something like that, like for me to want a nice oversized Marvel is rare enough that I'm just clamoring for that when it comes out. And I haven't even read it yet. I was even going to stop after the first story arc, but I heard so many people raving about it. I'm just like, I just kept picking it up. And now I've done where instead of buying the trade, I've just collected all 12 issues and have to sit down to read them.
All right. We have time for one quick voicemail.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm feeling lucky. Hey, guys, shout out to y'all. Just got done listening to episode 73. Lots of interesting subjects came up. My name is Randy D. I'm Jamie D's evil doppelganger. Nothing better. Concerning Blue Beetle's death. Oh, it was so appropriate. The art was great. The headshot was shown in shadow. There was nothing gory there. And when you look at the final panel, he's laying there in blood, but hey, no worse than a hockey game, no worse than the commercials I see for Ultimate Fighting. If you look at the death in comics, Supergirl, Elektra, Karate Kid, hey, they were all appropriate. And next subject, superhero figures and the tatas on the women. Hey, it's why we call them super, okay? Same thing with the guys. You don't see them like that. They're called superheroes. If I wanted to see regular bodies, hey, I'll go hang out down at McDonald's. Other thing, why do comic book shops smell? Hey, they're full of old comics. They're supposed to smell. And as far as your 5 villains of all time, I hardly agree with any of them, but I'll have to get back to you on that. Love the show. Look forward to listening to it. Saw episode 74 was just posted. It'll be with me on the way to work tomorrow. Take care.
Cool. Thank you.
Short and sweet.
To the
It
point.
covered a lot too.
Yeah, he's had a point to what he had to talk about.
All right. Well, big thanks to Stan Lee for taking 15 minutes out of his busy schedule to talk to us. It was a ultra geek out moment for all of us, and we'll remember it forever.
Yeah, 15 minutes to mean the world to us.
Yeah.
15 minutes of fame.
And along with that, once again, an incredible thanks to John Morrow at Tomorrow's Publishing for helping facilitate the interview. We really appreciate it, John. And check out all of Tomorrow's publications. They're really high quality items, and you won't be disappointed in any of them.
Very well produced. Very well produced.
So, if you'd like to send us an email, it's comicgeekspeak@gmail.com. Check out our website, comicgeekspeak.com. Thanks to Bob at GameCircuit.net for hosting the files. Thanks to UpAllNightGaming.com for hosting the website. Please vote for us at Podcast Alley. We're up to 159 votes so far. We're cruising our way to the top 10, so please continue. We're getting close. And we have some new T-shirts online you can get, so check out our swag page. And reminder that you were brought to you in conjunction with WorldFamousComics.com. And as always, we are uniting the world's mightiest heroes, one listener at a time.